Right.
Yeah, from now.
Let's go. Let's do this.
We already started. We've been started.
Oh, I'm gonna try to get some training. Training, yeah. Gotta
Alright.
keep up with Renee.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You two are the worst as well. Like yesterday in class, they were just like back and forward, and I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? And then today, like Renee's talking shit in the bloody Unbound staff chat about how like she's about to do
At
the
like
work.
7 in the morning.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick Michael's ass and all this stuff, and then she got pumped.
Yeah, just for the listeners, she got some humble pie.
Yeah, and
Like, I pulled in front and it was winning wasn't enough. I had to embarrass her.
you had to beat her and then do an extra round just to overlap her, just again one more time, just to who's the best again? Just making
It's
sure.
like one of those ones where you finish the workout and you're like hurting, but you just go and you like fake it and you walk over as if it like didn't even hurt,
Yeah,
and you
easy.
just fucking rub it in their
Could have
face.
done another round at least.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that one stings, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that's why I just don't talk trash, because I can't back it up. That's the difference, and I know I can't. I said to Renee, I was like, I don't. She's like, how did you every Tuesday she comes in? How did you do at the workout? I'm just like, look. I was like, look, you can have it. Like,
Yeah, you win.
Tuesday, I beat her today at everything.
The high skill stuff, we generally will get her.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
as soon as it's like body weight and running, she fucking pumps on.
quick workouts, I beat Michael at. Anything that's like less than 3 minutes, I can beat Michael. But anything over that, like, I just get pumped.
Not by much.
Yeah, no, seconds,
Yeah.
but
I'm
still a win.
I'm still top 5.
But like today's one, I think we were very close on workout 1, and then it was nothing. It was like Michael had it all the way. Maybe there's some unique workouts in there that I would beat him at. But nothing crazy. So apparently Redcliffe Fitness Hub competition is just, in general, I beat Michael. So
Yeah, you just carry me.
yes, but that's
Anything strong, man, I'm out.
that's very rare. Yeah, and it was body weight I was carrying around on me, that bloody dead ball. That was my body weight, and Michael was like dropped it after 1 lap. I was like, this guy did 5 laps, he did 1.
Mate, it's that short torso. It's fucking wedged between your quads and your chin.
It's the industry super fun.
You just had it locked in.
Mate, industry super fun. You can't drop a sandbag with that grip. It doesn't even break. So, they say, if you were with industry super fun, you would have saved more. You would have saved fucking more time.
I would have won.
Yeah, you would have done more reps. Cool. Anyway, we're just talking trash. Injury prevention. We're talking about niggles, injuries, and how to prevent them. The journey of any athlete.
42.
Episode 42, yeah, I know. Getting up there. Numbers are
Half century is coming up.
Half century. For all you listeners out there, just to let you know that most athletes carry 1 to 2 injuries per year, depending on the sport. Sports like powerlifting and long distance running seem to have a higher injury rate. To common belief, CrossFit is actually a moderately injured sport, not a high. People just generally see people injured in CrossFit and just like, oh my God, because people talk shit about it, it becomes more aware and obvious. People think that they're more likely to get injured. It's just not the case. It's a moderate injury sport. Like you have low injury sports, low impact sports like swimming. It's pretty hard to get injured
Plus,
in swimming.
it's a group sport. Like, you got to remember, like, CrossFit's a group sport. People have their phones out. Things are recorded, which means it's in people's faces. Like, you just don't see runners running next to each other recording each other.
Yeah.
So it's
and
like,
it's a long distance sport, so like
yeah, what are they going to do? Get home and then record themselves and reenact the trip or reenact the injury?
Exactly, and like one of the most common injuries in CrossFit is tearing your hands. It might not seem like an injury, but it generally is. It prevents you from doing further training. Nothing's worse than tearing your hands on Monday and then having a full week of training. You can't pick up a bar, you can't jump on the rig, you can't grab anything. You're literally just like, your hands have been cut off because everything hurts too much. And obviously there's a lot to that, but that's an injury that CrossFit has. Runners, they do the same thing, but to their feet. Their feet get messed up. Like, they've got calluses everywhere. They've got, they cuts. Blisters, yeah. And like, that freaking hurts. They can't run anymore because everything hurts so much. I mean, unless you David Goggins it and strap your feet up and then keep running, it's going to be an uncomfortable time. So generally, you're going to get injured, and you probably may already be carrying an injury or a niggle. Difference being, a niggle is something that is annoying, but you can still train through it. You're able to keep pushing.
Yeah, there's pain, and it might drop the percentage of performance output. gives you a little bit of discomfort, but it's nothing that stops you doing the movement.
Yeah, and like it's not like it's not like sharp pain. It's not like feels like your muscle's going to tear off the bone. It's just kind of like an annoying aggravation. We see it like tendonitis is a big one. That's kind of a niggle. It's not really something that's going to prevent you from doing things, but it might prevent of you from how much of something you can do.
A lot of them tend to be overuse injuries or little impact injuries. Maybe you fell off the box funny, or you landed funny on your ankle.
Yeah, and it just sticks around for a while. So they're like the more lower level ones, and then the more higher level ones, muscle tears, ligaments, tendons, or something like, a break, which generally doesn't happen in our area unless it's a catastrophic accident, but the muscle tear is probably a bit more common. Rotator cuffs, we have the most common injuries in CrossFit is backs and shoulders. Normally they're the two, back, shoulders, and knees.
That's not even just unique to CrossFit. I don't know if you've been following a lot of the other sports, but it's like, or you talk to a lot of the physios and chiros, it's always backs, knees.
Yeah, backs and knees.
Like, it's not unique to a sport.
Workplaces, what's the most common injury from a workplace?
They come in for backs.
It's backs,
or they come in for knees, or it's like, it's more to do with culture. It's just the fact. It coincides with us being more sedentary. It coincides with the phone. Like, it coincides with the car. Like, it coincides with the chair, the sitting with the backrest. Like, people just don't know how to hinge. Their core mechanics just aren't there. So they just can't tolerate as much stimulus or stress. So it's like there's always a ceiling, and the ceiling's just very low. So it's like look how knee over toe guy became so popular.
Yeah.
And the concept of it was just exposure therapy. So you just exposing the knee to lower levels of stress and building its tolerance.
Yeah.
And then your knees get stronger, which is basically the principle of training, progressive overload.
And the age-old one of like squatting below parallel is bad for you, but it's like, well, they're usually the people who are saying that the ones who can't squat below parallel. Yeah. It's bad for them because the first time they ever do it, their body goes into shock. Like, bro, we haven't used these muscles ever. Our abductors have never.
Do you remember the first time
on.
you bench pressed? I remember the first time I went into the gym as like 13 and I benched, and it was like fucking speed wobble. It was like nothing on the bar, empty bar. Like, we've all done it.
Yeah, I have a client who for his first session he was like that. Like, not only is he like a hardcore gamer, he's athletic at school, like runs and does that stuff, but he's never been in a gym environment. And yeah, his first squat, his first bench, he has like massive imbalances. Like, he'll shift to one side when he squats, like one of his arms like literally do all the work, and you can tell which arm is the more active one, in his personal life, because that happens, and you're like, wow. Like, but now, like, for me, then I'm like, okay, maybe the barbell's not a good option for this man. Maybe I'll get him on some dumbbells or some machines so we can focus on using both arms, but like allowing each arm to express its own level of power. And then after a little bit of that, we got him back to the bar, and I've seen a lot of improvement. Still a little bit of imbalance, still a little bit of shake, but nowhere near like he's having an epileptic fit on the barbell like our first time in the gym. I think for myself, my first movement I ever did was a tricep pull down in the gym. I don't know why, like it was the first cable pull down, and yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, even for me, like my friends were laughing because they were like, this guy has no clue. So that was quite refreshing and funny to get humbled. But I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm not even embarrassed because I've never done it before. But yeah, injuries, they happen. Niggles, they come and go. And there's a couple of things that you can do, not only for prevention, but to help get yourself back into training and being able to improve and get strength gains. And before we go into what you need to do, I just want to talk about some of the injuries that we've experienced, even just this year in general, even what we have right now, and some of the things that we've done to overcome them. For me personally, I'm carrying about, I'd say 3 injuries right now. Once again, they're niggles more than injuries because they don't prevent me from doing anything. They're just uncomfortable. They may be a bit annoying at sometimes. Some of them is just like an overuse. It starts to hurt a little bit after a while, but doesn't hurt when I start. So for me, I've got a shoulder. I tore my labrum in my hip last year, which is actually pretty good at the moment, but it's still like the only thing that's come out of that, the biggest niggle, is the hip tightness now, because the muscles regrown, but like for a long period of time I couldn't open it the way I could open my other hip. So now I've got a bit of issues. We see it when we do the shin box switches with the extension. I physically can't put my leg down to the ground because it just doesn't have the movement it used to yet, and that's the key point, yet, and that's part of rehab.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can't improve it.
Exactly. And Shoulder's a new one, actually. Shoulder's a new one. That one came on when with my leg. Funnily enough, the reason why my hip got injured was because I was producing more power on that side. I went to a sports scientist because I was so unsure about why one leg was always hurting after squats, after snatches and cleans. And I did this plate pressure test, and eventually, after testing all the different movements and different like variations of the way that the leg moves, like extension, flexion, like abduction, adduction, like I tested everything to do with each leg. And aside from knee extension, which for some reason my left leg had a 40% bonus strength on that side for knee extension, which comes back to AFL. That's a sport specific one, because that was the leg that I always used to stand on when I kicked. So one leg that did the big kick, the other one was straight, which knee extension. Makes sense. That one makes sense. That's a sport specific strength. Aside from that, everything else in my right leg was 15% stronger. So then I was starting to be more observant of what my right leg was doing. And I remember watching it cleans, and I showed Michael, and I was like fucking leaping to the right side when I was cleaning. So now you can imagine like why my legs like aggravated, because I'm cleaning like 100, 120 kilos at times, and I'm leaping onto that leg. Like I'm jumping off boxes on that side. I'm running harder on that side. Like it's just getting pounded, and it's not... The injury is actually nothing. It's just overuse. The leg is like, hey, bro, stop using me too much. And then ever since I had just more intention of pushing through my left leg, using my left leg more, that's kind of balanced it out. I still get some pain, some slight pain from it sometimes, because under fatigue, what happens is the right leg starts to take over again. It's just being more intentional. Instead of jumping to the right, I jump to the left. And the only reason I found out was when to see someone. And that's part of prevention, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Michael, what are some of the injuries that you've had this year? Some of the things that have affected you in your training?
I've had a couple, but one thing I've noticed this year, whether it's to do with just changing mindset or like the lifestyle changes I've made, I've bounced back way faster. So like I had...
the hamstring injury, I remember that was the first one.
Yeah, so the hamstring was the first one.
What caused that? I don't remember.
That's a hamstring. Skimboarding.
That's right.
Yeah, so the lifestyle caused the injury. But yeah, skimboarding. We had there's like a little lake thing, and we were practicing like stationary skimboarding. So it was like full sprint onto a stationary skimboard, and I jumped on it, had too much pressure on my back leg, and then obviously from that sprint and took off, and I just ended up doing my hammy. That took me a little bit to come back from. It's one that I'd done before, so I've done both hamstrings before, doing sprints, and it was that right one that just went again.
Yeah, right.
So obviously the biggest indicator for injury is previous injury. Yeah. So it just, for me, it was like, oh, okay, I hadn't really needed to do any of my old rehab, or I felt like I hadn't needed to. And then that was just a situation where I exposed myself to stress that I probably just wasn't ready for or couldn't tolerate, and then my hamstring went again. And the rehab process wasn't too bad. Like I was back, I trained the next day, I just trained around it, did what I could. I'm very big on, and I say this to my clients, like no painkillers, no anti-inflammatories unless your focus is rest. If you're wanting to train and things like that, you don't take that because you don't want to bypass your nervous system. So your nervous system is your best friend when you're training. So it's like, I have an injury or I have a niggle, I'm getting constant feedback. My body's telling me that's too much, that's too little, that's okay. Like, and that's how you can kind of train around it. The moment you bypass that, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Like
you go and you take these painkillers or these anti-inflammatories, you're not getting your signaling. So you come in and you're like, yeah, my back feels good. And you deadlift and you end up pushing the needle too far, and then you make it worse.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing you want to avoid. Like, you don't actually want to avoid training, because a lot of the time training is exactly what you need.
Yeah.
So you look at, I know for me, like my hip flexor was the classic one. So I did my hip flexor and it was just overuse. Like, it was a lot of toaster bar, a lot of strict work, a lot of single leg knee to chest, parallel L holds, just way more stress than I was used to. And I'm very competitive, so for me, I'm like, I'm just doing the session, irrelevant of whether I believe it's too much or it's not. And then you saw us when we competed. Like, we literally went to compete at Fitness Hub, and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And we're sitting there warming up, and I could lift my left leg off the ground, and my right leg just didn't move. And I was like, you might need to do all the toes to that.
We had to pick up his leg and try to like lift it as high as we can. He was like struggling. I was like,
but it's like, one thing I definitely, I have a lot of willpower. Yeah. Like I just don't, I'm competitive, and I don't like letting people down. So I just pushed myself through. Like that was a lot. Doing those toaster bar was one of the most painful things I've ever had to do. Like,
shit.
Like I literally felt like my hip was like tearing off the bone every time I'd come down on the eccentric.
Oh.
Going up was fine. Like I could tuck my knees in, I could touch, but the extension part of the toaster bar, so where I was coming down and my legs on that negative, just got me every time. Like it just felt like a rubber band snapping, and I was like, but it was like, no, just go. And obviously adrenaline takes over, and then you start to, I don't know if you like pain exposure, you learn to tolerate more pain.
Yeah.
And it kind of ends up like that. So you start early through the set, and then you just get used to it.
Yeah.
But beside the point, don't do that.
No, bad idea.
Yeah, that was just a unique scenario where it just is what it is. I just couldn't recover in time, but I'd already committed to it, so I just put myself through it. The rehab process, I basically the next day I was back in the gym. I was doing some light isometric holds, so I was just doing a single leg standing psoas hold, which is a stand, lift your knee to your chest and hold it. All right, and I would try and hold for, like, the goal is to get back to 2 minutes. I could hold maybe 5 seconds. I had to assist it to get it up.
No.
All right, and then it would be like, and it was 5. I was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it just dropped, and I was like, oh shit. But I just did it 3 to 4 sets. I did some assisted holds. I started doing some hip 90-90s. A lot of the stuff I was doing was just assisted. So I couldn't support the weight of my leg. And then I did that every day. So I just did a little bit every day, exposed myself to it. And then I built up to not doing assisted and going back through. And within 2 weeks, I was back doing everything. Yeah. I just had to be careful with how much volume I was doing. It didn't really affect my compound movements, which I was lucky with, so I could train around that. It was just isolation. So anytime there was isolation of that hip flexor, I was in trouble.
Yep.
But it's still, I think, what's it now, like, it's 4 or 5 weeks? No, it'd be 6 weeks now.
Yeah, nearly 6.
Be about 6 weeks post, and I'm almost back at 100%. But I'm big like that. Like, so I won't, any injury I get, like, I won't just do nothing. Like, I never just do nothing. As soon as I can, I will go back and I will put a little bit of stress on that muscle group. Very light stimulus and stress, just with the focus of increasing blood flow to that area and just giving a little bit of stimulus to help manage inflammation and whatever's going on there. And then as I kind of get to like a 2-week period, so the first 2 weeks for me are generally like that, then I start to challenge it a bit more.
Yeah.
So it's like a bit of exposure therapy where I start throwing back in the movement that I was doing.
Yeah.
So let's say it was seated leg lifts that were hurting me. I would start doing that again.
Yeah.
But I would just do an assisted version of it.
Yeah, and control and be more of a controlled environment. That's the thing. Like, people like get injured and they go, like, they pull a muscle and they go get a massage. And I'm like, what is a massage? It is just pushing blood to the muscle. Right, yeah, you're moving the muscle. You're like, you're massaging it, but essentially you're pushing blood to it, which is going to increase recovery. That's what exercise also does. It pushes blood to the muscle. Rolling out pushes blood to the muscle. Like, the goal is to push blood, push nutrients, increase recovery, and you're going to do that through movement. That's why sometimes when the doctors, who them themselves look like they probably need a doctor, prescribe you 30 minutes of walking, and like one of the clients here, she broke some of her ribs, and she's like her doctor told her, no training at all for 8 weeks. You must walk 3 times or like 30 minutes a day. And I'm like, cool. Like the same idea as being a professional walker. Eventually, walking is going to get.
But it's quite interesting because it's like what is going to be the most stress on your rib cage?
Your movement,
your lungs expanding and contracting. So it's like just the concept of like, hey, nothing except just walk. It's like there's still stress there.
Yeah, maybe instead of it, it's like, okay,
sit and do leg extensions. It's probably not going to affect your ribs.
Yeah, or just don't do things that hurt.
Yeah.
Like that's normally that's what you were saying with, and I agree with the medication. It's like, get that feedback. Okay, this hurts. I don't do it. This doesn't hurt. I can do it. Like, that's as simple as it gets. Like, and just work out what you can do, what you can't do, and don't get so demotivated with like, oh, I'm injured. Like, fuck this. Like, I don't show up to the gym. Like, we have a lady here who hurt her back, and it's been affecting her work and her sleep and everything. And I just told her, and like, this is the thing we've said on so many of our podcasts: keep that little time period of your day blocked out for training. Show up. do something. Don't feel like it's a burden on us to come ask us what you can do if you can join in the class. 9 times out of 10, it'll be yes, unless you come in with 4 broken limbs and you're like wheelchaired in, and even then we get you to do some neck exercises. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, but it's like, why remove the mental benefits of movement?
That's
like,
that's what I say. I'm like, what I tell people is, I'm like, so like one of the members, Garen, he came in the other day and he was sick. He just had the flu and he didn't have the energy to do the class. He just was so run down. His lungs were hurting. He's no longer sick, but he was just like still feeling the off effects of the end of it. And he came upstairs, did some bodybuilding. He came over to me. He's like, I'm freaking bored, man. He's like, I don't want to, like, he's like, I want to be here, but he's like, I'm just missing out on the class. I feel like I'm missing out. I said to him, I was like, bro, there's no harm in going over and warming up with everyone and talking shit, then leaving. I was like, or like sitting next to them on the assault bike while they're doing the workout. Like, there's no harm in that. Like, you're still a part of it. You're still including yourself, and you know, you're still like talking and getting that like that stimulation of being here, and it's going to make you more likely to show up tomorrow, because you're like, wow, that was, even though like I can't train, like it was still really fun. Like I still got to talk to the same people I talk to every day. I still got to experience some of the stuff they did. I got to be around them. I got something out of it. I wasn't doing nothing, and it was, you know, it wasn't entirely boring. So it's like, that's good. That's the pathway to recovery. It's like, there's going to be limitations, and you have to understand that. And my biggest rule is 2 weeks. 2 weeks you have until your injury becomes like, if it's
generally pain free. So yeah, you need 2 weeks pain free.
Yeah, and if it's 2 weeks and you still have the same pain, like go fucking see someone. Like if you come to us and like, hey, like this is the issue, like we'll give you some recommendations, but at the end of the day, we're not physiotherapists by qualification.
No, and I mean, like, obviously don't always do what we do. Like someone asked me the other day, they're like, how come you never go see a physio when you have an injury? And I was like, mate, I've been training for a long time and I've seen a physio many times, and every time I go to the physio now, I go to Gavin and I'll go see him and he goes, what are you going to do? And he's at the point where he's like, you don't need to come and see me anymore.
Yeah.
He's like, you already understand the process, you understand your body. Like, he's like, I know you're going to know what to do.
Exactly.
It's like, it's only when I don't know what to do, or I'm trying something and it's not working,
yeah,
then I go back to him.
Precisely. That's my sports scientist situation. I didn't know what was working. I thought I took some time off the leg. It seemed to heal, but as soon as I started training again, it would come back. Did some exercises, asked you for some assistance. We did those exercises. It didn't fix anything. It, like, every time I started squatting again or doing anything with squatting, it started hurting again. So I was like, for fuck's sake, I did single leg work, it still hurt, and it was so weird. So then I went to a physio, I went to a different physio, got a third opinion. All 3 physios didn't tell me shit. They charged me a fortune and like didn't even massage me for, like, most of them didn't massage me, which is what I wanted.
No rub and tug.
No rub. But then I was like, fuck it, like maybe I need to think outside the box. My choice was chiro or sports scientist, and I was like, this sports scientist guy is $50 for an hour. Let's give him a go. Like he's almost a physio, but he's almost not. Like he does a little bit of different stuff, more performance-based stuff for athletes. And it was through him that I found the issue, and it wasn't even him that found the issue. He just kind of said like, hey, you put more pressure through that leg. But then it became more obvious, like, okay, I'm favoring one side of my body. I wouldn't have found that out if I didn't do some trial and error. I didn't do some detective work. But like, most people are untrained in that sense. Like you guys won't know what exactly to do. You don't have much experience with injuries, and you haven't
know what to look for.
Yeah, you haven't dealt with it, or you don't know exercises or stretches or movements that are going to help you get through that. So yeah, maybe like after 2 weeks, if you don't see any improvement, the pain remains the same or gets worse, go see someone. Because think long term. Let's say you have that injury for 3 months, you haven't done anything about it, and it could have been fixed by now. Like, so now you delay another 3 months to get rid of this injury. That's 6 months that you're not able to squat. That's 6 months you can't deadlift, you can't bench, you can't run, you can't do whatever. Like, that's more depressing to me than 2 weeks, suck it up, spend the $100, $150. You might only need to go once to some of these physios. They might tell you what's wrong. You bring that information back to us, and we can help you through it, and we can give you like some idea of, okay, this is what you need to do. We can give you some more warm-up primers, or we can make sure that in the warm-up you're doing specific things. things towards your recovery, and then you're going to be better off for it. Because inherently, the end game is everyone's going to get injured at some point. You're pushing the needle, you're pushing your body's boundaries of what it's capable of. Eventually, it's going to give, and maybe that's a previous injury, like you were talking about. Maybe it's like a weakness in your body that you didn't know you had, or maybe you favor a side through a previous sport, or maybe your job, you do something repetitively on one side, or maybe you sit down all day. Like, you've got all these factors that you're not considering. Like, it might not have been the wall balls that injured you. It might have been the 8 hours per day, 5 days a week for an entire year that you sit in a computer chair. Then doing wall balls on top of that probably didn't help. So you got to consider these things, and
you're not going to have no injuries. Like, injuries are guaranteed.
Yeah, and
you deal with them.
They're mostly in niggles, and mostly not like debilitating injuries where you've like broken your wrist or something.
Yeah, it's very rare that it's like, grade 3 tear, like rupture, like that doesn't exactly happen here. Like, it's going to be, for most of us, it's going to be overuse, and it starts to aggravate over time, and we choose to ignore it, and we can make it worse.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, don't ignore it. Like, you can still train on it as long as you're giving it attention.
Yeah.
Like, it's very rare that you see someone give an injury some attention with some specific deliberate warm-ups, some specific recovery protocols, and they don't get better.
Yeah. Unless the training volume does not reflect that of someone who is slightly injured. Like,
we call it training hygiene. So it's like, my elbow's sore. Well, what are you doing? You just, you told me your elbow's sore, but what have you done about it? Like, wearing an elbow sleeve, or like go and get a massage. Like, unfortunately, those aren't the things that are going to give you... They'll give you a little bit of instant gratification and like relief, but they're not the things you need to be doing for constant change.
You can't rely on them either. Like, you can't just keep putting Band-Aids on and hoping it's just going to improve.
Yeah, you need to correct movement. Maybe like, there's something in that chain that's going wrong. So it's like, there's a reason why. Like, think about it. Why is it only happening on one side?
Yeah. Or why does everyone else...
If you're snatching, it's like, why is it only happening on one side? It's like, well, maybe my wrist is weak there, so I'm getting a little bit of a collapsed wrist, and then that's putting more pressure on the elbow. Like, exactly what you were talking about. Like, it's those asymmetries. But if all I'm doing is getting a massage, I'm never going to fix anything.
Yeah, you're just going to feel really good. But that's the other side of things. Like, why? And then ask yourself, like, you got to look bigger picture, detach yourself. It's not why me. It's like, well, why is it only me?
Exactly.
Like, everyone else is snatching and no one else is wearing wrist
muscle
wraps.
up, and they were fine.
Yeah. So why is it only me? And then that's the last.
So it's like, in business, it's like, look to the people who have walked the path.
Yeah.
And try to copy what they've done. And it's exactly the same in fitness. Like, okay, look at the people who have walked the path and didn't get the injury. What did they do different? Did they wear different shoes? And that's the thing. Like, do they have a different hand position? What's their setup like? Like, that's how you get better.
Yeah, and 9 times out of 10, it probably just comes down to either asymmetries or a lack of mobility that's caused a poor position, that causes more pressure somewhere that you don't need it to be. The thing is like, the last thing I want to talk about with injuries and coming out of like Niggles injuries and, the prevention stage of it is getting back into the movement that hurts you. So most of the time...
You should do it as soon as you can.
Of course. But most of the time we see injuries outside the gym, people come into the gym. So like touch football, kids, bloody work, whatever. Like, they've been injured already, they come into the gym. So normally it's upsetting for us because it's like, damn, it didn't happen in the gym. Like, we couldn't be there to at least assist you on the spot. Like, it's been happening over time, whatever. So they come into the gym, they've been injured. Let's say, for example, like you said, we're reintroducing the back squat to someone who got hurt on the back squat. One of the things that they've found with athletes who get reintroduced to the movement or the muscle area that was causing them the pain is a lack of power expression. They're not able to produce as much power because inherently their body is pulling back on the amount of effort they put in because they're so worried. They might be at 100%, and people in this study were 100% at the time when they were looking at moving to that new movement or moving back to that movement that caused them the issue, but they still weren't able to produce the power because they were hesitating. They were worried. They had in their mind, like, this is what hurt me. Like, and your body is very good at avoiding pain. Like, that's what it does. What does it do when you get hurt? It compensates. It finds another way to do the same thing. Is it the best way to do it? No, but did it do it? Yes, that's what the body wants. It tries to pivot so that it can do what it needs to do to survive, even if that means injuring itself more in the long term. It doesn't think about that. It thinks about the task now. So a lot of athletes come back, they reintroduce that movement that hurt them, and then they just hesitate until they get up. And that's just going to be some small confidence building sets. Like, it might take you 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks to get to where you once were, but you will get back there as long as you are slowly building up. You're doing your prehab, rehab, and you're reintroducing the movement that actually did cause you the issue. Like, that's the thing to take away. Like, eventually you will get back to where you were, and you'll probably get further because now you don't have an injury. Now you don't have weak muscles in the area. If anything, the muscles will probably be stronger than they were before. And that's what I always find, like, coming back off time off or coming back off an injury, you end up PBing at some point. You're like, holy shit, like, I'm stronger than ever. But like 6 weeks ago, I was squatting an empty bar, you know what I mean? So it's like, sometimes it's kind of hard to picture, but it happens. You come out of that phase, and then you are better for it because now you've got more experience in the movement. If it comes up again or it flares up, you know what to do. You've got a couple of exercises you can use, or a couple of tools in your toolbox that you can go and grab so that you are able to improve. So
yeah, and that's the key thing. Like, remember what worked. So don't, like, you know, okay, sweet, like doing some isometric holds last time on my hamstring helped me, doing some switches, doing some tantrums, working on some dynamic contractions. Like, it's going to be trial and error, but your body is very adaptive. Like, everyone's body's adaptive.
Yeah.
Give it enough time, couple weeks, you'll see progression, you know that worked, and you just remember it. So it's like, okay, this is flared up again. Roll that into your prehab. Oh, I remember when I was doing wrist roll-ups, that helped me with my snatches. You just bring it back in.
Yeah, and then just got to make sure, like, and what we always say is, even though the warm-up is very generalized, it should be specific to the individual athlete. So don't feel bad with changing a few movements to things that were going to work better for you. If your hips are the most mobile hips ever, there's no need that you need to add in, like, the shin box switches. Maybe instead you add in the wrist roll-ups.
Yeah, and that's the main thing. Like we said, a lot of people change the main program, but not change the warm-up.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, okay, you have a shoulder issue, but it's like, you're not snatching. It's like, yeah, that's fine, but you didn't change anything in the warm-up to address your shoulder issue.
Yeah, you could have primed it better. You could even be snatching a stick for a week here. Like, you're still introducing it back in. Then you progress to a light barbell, a heavier barbell, and you get better. So, but it's just like, it starts with the warm-up. It starts with being aware that you have an injury and that it's not improving, and then doing something about it. Don't just sit on it for like 3-4 months and just hope that it goes away. It might eventually go away.
You can't just kick the can down the road. Like, eventually you have to pay your debts.
Yeah, it's going to come back and bite you, and that's the main thing. So that's going to cover off episode 42, talking about injuries, niggles, and prevention. If you do have an injury and that you haven't told anyone about, and you're looking for someone to give you a hand, hit us up. We'll make sure we're about to help you, or hit up your own coach at your own affiliate to make sure that they are at least aware that you have something wrong with you. Like, they might not have the answer because they're not, they're not a qualified physiotherapist, but they might have some solutions that could at least assist you in your warm-up.
Yeah, and they can point you in the right direction.
Exactly. Maybe someone they know who is a good physio or a good chiropractor or something that's able to fix your problem, or maybe they've got someone who's had the same injury who might have a few exercises that they've used. Utilize the information around you first, then looking for external help if you're not seeing any improvement, and hopefully you can get back into training and kick some ass. Cool. That's it. That's episode 42. See you next time.